The whole idea of landscape architecture is probably one of the most misunderstood professions. When I first started university, I wanted to be an architect. After going through the program at the University of Manitoba, I was exposed to landscape architecture, city planning, interior design, as well as architecture. And eventually I entered the landscape architecture program to achieve my master's degree. By the time I graduated, the country had gone into one of those little mini recessions, and finding a job for a young aspiring landscape architect was at a premium. So I entered the role as a designer at a garden center. While I was still designing spaces for people, I was able to take it and use the natural environment to its fullest and understand what kind of plants achieve things better. That actually opened a lot of doors for me because I was looked at by the city of Winnipeg to run the gardens at Assiniboine Park, which is a Frederick Todd park. And it was a wonderful journey for me to actually work on that particular project. Eventually, I became one of the landscape architects at the city of Winnipeg. And finally, I ended up at the city of Windsor, my hometown, as in the position that I am now, which is landscape architect, senior urban designer in the planning department. There are a few projects that I've actually done that I really like. And from an actual tangible project that I worked on was the Rotary 1918 Plaza here in the city of Windsor, where heat island effect was becoming a big problem in the area. Just everything was just asphalt. This project has actually created a space that has made people in the city of Windsor identify this particular part of the Windsor waterfront as a destination, not just from a tourist perspective, but from a local perspective, especially with the swings that face out towards the Detroit River and the Detroit skyline, and the shade structure that allows people to kind of do any kind of little mini events or even weddings down at the plaza. And the space is a very welcoming space. And as a result of that, what I wanted to make sure was that every culture that that is in Windsor was featured. So the top 40 languages, including the top four indigenous languages spoken in Windsor, are represented by saying welcome throughout the entire site on the four major entry points. So it's been a really fun project on that. Every municipality has a different makeup and demographics of people. And each of those demographics have a different desire, different needs. For example, if you were to ask me this question, I'm going to say back when I was in high school, oh, the answer would be much different than it is today. Because what we needed to do back then was to make spaces where people could actually just go out and enjoy. And that may have been just grassed areas or pathways. But now we overlay, and some cities have taken the challenge of doing bike paths and bringing in multimodal transit facilities. Not all cities can do that. Not all cities need to do that. The second largest language spoken in Windsor is now Arabic, four times bigger than French. So there are certain needs that, from a spatial idea, from a public realm aspect, that are revered by people coming from the Middle East than there are from people coming from France, than there are from people coming from China or from a Southern American community. So you have to understand what those things are, what the desires are. It makes me feel really good as a landscape architect to know that what we have done, what I have done, or what my colleagues as landscape architects have done is to create a space that people can use. They find it functional. It answers the questions as to being there to create public realm spaces. And one of the things that I I really appreciate is when I hear the comments coming from the youth, because they're the ones who are going to be the new shepherds of that property. And by having youth say that they like it and they really enjoy it means that it's going to have longevity for years. The Ontario Association of Landscape Architects has been moving towards a practice act. The practice act will actually help us govern and regulate, what a landscape architect does, how they do things to ensure that they give the public good, whether that's from a health and safety perspective, whether that's from an environmental sustainability perspective, or whether that's even from an accessibility perspective. So those are the sorts of things that a landscape architect has to do, and that's what the Practice Act, ushering in the Practice Act, is going to do for us. With the Practice Act, what's really nice that's happening is the blanket uh, professional recognition that's happened in British Columbia. It's given a precedence for us to kind of move towards the Practice Act. I'm not saying the Practice Act is the only thing we have to do, but that's the primary focus right now is get that through and get our house in order to make sure that when we do go into Practice Act, we're ready to go full heads on.